Hello, I'm Lanre Lasise. Welcome to the program Rethinking Nigeria, a Perspective. Now, this program reviews the happenings at the National Conference, which is taking place in the capital city of Abuja. I'm sure you remember the unique task before the almost 500 delegates that are gathered to dialogue and, come up with a roadmap for a new Nigeria. On this episode, we'll bring you a report on the highlight of the proceedings as it occurred last week, and then a chat with our regular guest on some of the developments at the conference. Let's start with a report on last week as it occurred.
Thank you, and God bless. Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
For a week that turned out to be the closing stage of the discussion on the president's inauguration speech, it can be summed up as a tale of two halves. The first dealt with some administrative issues brought up by the delegates.
In the toilets, there was nowhere to be found toilet roll. And again, this morning, I went in there, the same observation.
Because issues like these are what the press men will latch onto. And before you know it, tomorrow headlines will be delegates complain about tissue paper. So we plead, there are bound to be lapses and problems. But please, let's lay our complaints behind the scene, and it's when we are not getting response, we can bring them to plenary.
Saying that the lunch we take is 60,000 per head. I think it's scandalous, and I would like to be associated with it. I would be pleased if this, by the Secretary, would like to officially deny that this is not so. Because those of us who said we didn't want monetization, that is what the public will be thinking that we wanted to take.
60,000 absolutely untrue. Please, gentlemen of the press, help us. Help us. It is 4,000 and something per plate. And I wonder where in Abuja you are going to get lunch for 4,000 and something naira. It's just impossible.
Please, Mr. Chairman, 4,000 naira is more than enough for a plate of food. But we are not having it here. Let us change to a better place.
The observations were duly noted by the Secretariat. The week also had the last group of delegates speaking on the president's speech.
States which don't have oil should allow states which have oil to take 100% oil revenue. Thank you. And states which don't have oil should take 100% land resource.
The issue of local governments should be left for the zones or for the states, so that if a state or a zone interested in creating and making every family a local government, it should feel free to do so. So in my view, in my opinion, one of the areas that can unify our country is to decentralize the central government.
Whatever we do here, no matter how good it is, unless we have the right kind of leadership, nothing good is going to happen in this country.
Eventually, the discussion came to an end.
I think the entire House deserves another round of applause for itself for having gone through this. We have finished with this item. Now, we could just adjourn until Monday, or it's up to you, or we could take comments from the floor on any issue.
Proceedings was immediately adjourned till Monday. It is expected that by then the different committees and their membership will be announced. Let's now have the interview with our regular guest. He's the president and founder of ANAP Foundation, which is a non-profit organization committed to promoting good governance. He's also a delegate at the National Conference. He's Atedo Peterside. Now, he started the chat with his impression of the week's proceeding at the National Conference.
I think the week went very well. If you notice, towards the end of the week, the tension in the air had gone. People were a lot more relaxed. But I think that was natural and it was expected. Because this was the week that you could say that every single delegate that arrived at the conference and wanted to speak was given a chance to speak. Yes. In fact, the chairman even actually went around and called those who had not spoken, whether they wanted to speak or whether they were in the hall and so on. I mean, if a man is at the conference and is told that he has the chance to speak, and then he doesn't turn up, you cannot go to his house to come and beg him to speak. In any case, those kind of people, there will never be a problem. Yes. The problem was those who were at the conference and wanted a chance to say what was disturbing them, what the issues were, and they felt they were frustrated because there was no chance to speak. Now they've all had their moment. Yes. Everybody has had this time to address the whole hall.
Even if they didn't have enough time, at least they
It doesn't matter. You were given 3 minutes. It was for you to make the best use of the time. Yes. So you can only blame yourself if you spend the first 2 minutes going around in circles.
Now I'd like to take you on the issues that were brought up during the week. Which issues did you find unique? Which ones did you really like?
Well, they say charity begins at home. Yeah. So probably I should discuss or summarize what I said, because obviously each of us came and we were given time to speak. So each of us mentioned the things that you thought were most important. Yeah. So therefore, it wouldn't be a coincidence if the things that I spoke about were the things which I felt were also most important, because I was given free choice. Yeah. I could have come there to discuss anything else. I focused on an aspect of the president's speech, because this was about the president's speech. The president's speech covered many things, and there were many insightful statements, things that are not all surprises, because we've heard them before, some of them. But one of the most important things that I thought he said was when he made a comment that said, we cannot, I think it was on page 25 of his speech, which we all have, when he said we cannot continue to prefer yesterday's solutions to today's problems. Now, when somebody says we cannot continue, it means we have been doing it. And I think he's right that we have been doing it. There are many problems facing the nation that today, that we have been trying to solve them applying solutions of yesterday. Now, so we should ask ourselves, or I asked myself, why have we been doing this? Why would our leaders or a nation consistently try and apply solutions of yesterday to today's problems or to new problems? And I came to the conclusion, which was basically what I said in the auditorium, that I think is because we have not sat down and properly diagnosed some of the mistakes of the past. So we are repeating the same mistakes, and that is why we are applying also the same solutions. And I gave examples, and I came up with a list myself of about 9 key mistakes that this country has made in the last 50 years. And my honest belief is that we have not fully learned the lessons of those mistakes. It shows in the utterances of the elite, it shows in the behavior of leaders and so on, that they've not fully learned some of those lessons. And I took them initially in the historical context. What was the first major lesson? Even though I was a young boy at the time, I think the first major lesson was 1965. Those were the events that preceded the first coup. What was the lesson of 1965? Some people think it was, there was violence, people were protesting election results and so on. That was not the lesson. The lesson of 1965 for me, with the benefit of hindsight, was that our political leaders did not know when to restrain the excesses of their supporters. So now, hindsight, if they had known that there was going to be a bloody coup arising from all that, I bet you they would have restrained their followers. So is that inability to know the right time to restrain your supporters from their excesses. Now, have you not seen yourself signs of political leaders till today not knowing the right time to restrain their followers? So that we've not fully learned that lesson in 1965. It was lost on many people. The second lesson came in 1966, which was in response to the first one, when political leaders did not restrain their followers sufficiently. Things got to a point where somebody else is going to try and provide a solution. So a bunch of young officers in the army, and if you look at their ages, you still today I wonder how young they were and how they thought they could solve the nation's problem. So basically, that second mistake or lesson was that they sought to solve a problem of violence in 65 by trying to visit further violence and bloodshed on it. So it was like trying to use greater violence to solve a problem of violence. Till today, do you not see signs of people in Nigeria trying to solve a problem of violence with even greater violence? So you then get into this violence spiral where one bloody coup led to a second bloody coup and so on. So you get the spiral of violence. So that's the second lesson. The third was that when our leaders, saw that a bunch of young officers were now in charge of the country, especially from in 67 onwards, and again, we're going to check their ages. Instead of them always constantly trying to give accurate, correct feedback and guidance to those young leaders, some of them try to take advantage of the naivety of those leaders. That is the problem that still bogs this nation down, where people know they're dealing with a governor, dealing with an LGA chairman or anything. Instead of telling him the correct thing, they deliberately try and even play on his lack of knowledge or ignorance and try and use that to score advantage. So the point I'm making is that the people are still repeating that same mistake of constantly trying to gain advantage from an error or something like that. And sometimes it's sectional. If you find that somebody from your part of the country mistakenly got into a position of authority, instead of trying to get him to do the right thing, if anything, the society puts pressure on him, saying that since you are a son and it's our turn, yes, you must now do the same bad things that others did before you. Effectively, you're telling him to also fall the way that those before him fell. So that's the third error. The fourth one was that at some point also along the line, I don't have an exact date, we started to mix religion into politics. Now, mixing religion with politics, it's almost like trying to ride a tiger, because you think you know when to get off. But, it's a dangerous cocktail, and if you sufficiently mix religion into politics, you think when you started it that you were being clever and you could determine its boundaries and what you could tell people to do using their faith and your political ambition. But it can easily spiral out of control. The logical extension of that also gave us Boko Haram. Because initially you think that I can use religious, issues and so on to political advantage. You then start preaching something that somebody else takes from you and even converts to even a more violent ideology. And then in the end, even you lose control and have to run for cover. So that's like the fourth mistake. And it still happens every day. People are mixing religion into politics. The fifth one is that, and this was largely in 1967, it began to manifest itself, even 66. When people found that there was a problem, there was almost a breakdown. It was leading to Biafra at the time. The Eastern region under Ojukwu could not see eye to eye with Gowon and so on. There was a stalemate of some sorts. When you have a stalemate or you have a major disagreement, there are standard methods globally of trying to resolve a conflict. Without going to war first. Usually, even in the corporate world, there are corporate principles. There are skills of negotiation, getting past no, accepting the concept of win-win. That is, I don't want to win and you must lose and so on. That's one general approach. The second one is also borrowed from diplomats. Diplomacy, diplomats are involved 24/7 in sitting down, negotiating, discussing, trying to find common ground, not so. We did not apply the lessons from corporate governance in terms of handling negotiations. We did not apply those lessons, nor did we apply the lessons from diplomats on how to resolve disputes. Instead, we remained at loggerheads, dug fast into our positions, and it took us all the way to civil war. Now, even till today, there are many instances where there's a conflict or there's a problem, and people refuse, even when you try and tell them, can we apply these principles of corporate governance and so on? They say, no, we don't want that this is politics. When you say this is politics, don't you see how we resolve this issue of the voting at the Congress? Some wanted 3/4, some wanted 2/3. At the end of the day, we applied the principles of corporate governance in negotiation and so on, and also diplomacy, and we resolved No, there was no winner, there was no loser. Those who wanted 3/4 moved to 70. Everybody shifted. There was win-win. Everybody went away saying that, but for his intervention, the other side would have won. Everybody was happy. So that is another lesson where that is thinking win-win and applying these principles to solve a problem. The next one, which is now number 6, was that to make it even more difficult to get experienced people to intervene and get the not so experienced political leaders to follow due process and so on, the civil service was like available as a check and balance on political office holders. Somewhere along the line, from the mid-70s, another military ruler came in and we basically destroyed the civil service. So that the check and balance in the system where you had civil servants who had knowledge, history, case files was thrown out. When that happened, so effectively, therefore, you have also thrown out those checks and balances. Till today, we've not fully restored a civil service that we can be proud of. So we still have political leaders entering the ministry, finding that they can dominate everybody who is there. When they say jump, everybody says how high, violate due process and so on. So we're still facing the problems that arise from not having a competent civil service, which will plague any country. Then, for the reasons I explained earlier, people used all this religion, ethnicity, and so on to carry out all forms of injustice. You can even see when they create local government, you can almost know who was in charge by the number of local government that he gave to those in his area and things like that. And that's why we got this mindset of when our son is in office, it's our own turn to equally try and cheat others. So we basically enthroned injustice in the nation. And to make matters worse, which was the lesson, is that our lawyers and our judges, between them, somehow conspired to make it impossible for people to quickly seek legal redress and get justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. My own father spent 17 years on a court case that went all the way to Supreme Court. How can people wait 17 years for justice? So first you enthrone injustice, then you make it impossible for people to get injustice. That thing I've described of the difficulty of getting justice is still plaguing us till today. And that is why people deliberately do the wrong thing, knowing that even if you go to court, it will take you 17 years to get justice. So it encourages bad behavior.
If you get at all.
If you get it at all. Then the other one was, which is the 8th one, is that as a nation, we got to the point where, for many of our leaders, our word stopped being our bond. Which meant that even if you agreed something with leaders and you shook hands and you left, the fellow will come back and breach the agreement. There was no longer, there was no longer a willingness for people to honor what they've agreed to. This was also what partly led to the Civil War. By the time both sides went to Abuja, both sides came back saying that they were standing by what they agreed to. But their interpretations were contradictory, and we finished up at war. Now, again, in this conference, when we had this problem of, I keep on using the example of a disagreement, 2/3 vote, 3/4 vote, we took a decision, and the so-called 50 wise men, we finished on a Thursday. Yes. We were given 70%. I went back to Lagos. When I went back to Lagos, I was shocked. People told me, have you guys resolved? I said, yes. Then they said, what are you doing here? I said, well, we'll go back on Monday to go and inform the House. And I was told by almost everybody, that's a very big mistake. I said, what do you mean? They said, don't you know that whatever you think you agreed, by the time they all go home, speak to their people, when they come back on Monday, it will be a different story. I said, hang on a second. Why would we believe that in Nigeria, even if you pick a gathering of 50 wise men, their word will not be their bond? What they agreed to on a Thursday, by Monday morning they will change it. But the fact that many people were making that prediction showed you that they believe that that is the way things are done in Nigeria. My reply to them, and hindsight I was correct, was that this time round I think they are wrong, which is that on Monday morning there will be no problem. What was my reason? I said because I think the 50 wise men we were dealing with were gentlemen. Okay? So now if your word is not your bond, then even what you agreed to has no meaning. The next one is that, which was probably the most dangerous of all, and the 9th one was that we started to run a system where we enthroned perverse incentives. By that I mean that you reward the person that behaves badly. As soon as you start rewarding people who behave badly, then everybody thinks, let me behave badly as well. And this has gotten to such a high level, and I'm sorry to say, but I cannot even exempt the highest levels. Take former heads of states. How can we discuss General Abubakar, who restored democracy in 11 months, gave us democracy for which we are still thankful? I think he should be given the highest honor of all. Why do we insult him by giving that same honor to heads of state who committed high treason? The method of getting into office was to stage a coup to destroy democracy. How can you reward the person that restored democracy in the same way as the person who destroyed democracy? So the point I'm making is that now, if you think here carefully, those are perverse incentives. What lesson do you send to the young army officers today? Do you want to send them a lesson that says that it doesn't matter how long it takes? If you are involved in toppling democracy in Nigeria, we are going to charge you for high treason, even if you are age 80. If you send that kind of message, people will be a lot more careful. But I can give you many other examples. I even give the example that even in the conference at the beginning, the chairman and the high table were almost rewarding those delegates who refused to sit down and were jumping up and raising their hands. I said, look, if you start rewarding bad behavior, then nobody will sit down.
Everybody will have to.
Everybody has to be jumping up and misbehaving because they find that that's the way you get a reward. So these are all the mistakes that I said that, as far as I'm concerned, that we have not learned as a nation.
Okay.
And if you don't correct all these mistakes, whatever solution that we think we come up with or that we negotiate will not stand.
Okay, but those were your own views.
My own views.
Now,
yes.
what other views did you find?
Of course, there were lots of views, but there was also what I call convergence. Okay. More and more, it was obvious, and I said so as well when I was speaking, that it was obvious if you sat through all the contributions that the later speakers had been influenced by the earlier speakers, because some of them had stopped saying some things. See, because unless you're somebody who arrived with your ears blocked and you didn't want to listen to anybody, if you had a position you were going to argue, and others before you have shown why that position is wrong, it would be insensitive and almost appear dumb to now come and repeat your same old argument that has been shown to be incorrect. So people were being influenced, which is the purpose of a conference. Even for me, if you had asked me to speak on the first day, the things I would have said would have been different from what I said when I spoke. Because in between, I've heard others say some of those things, address them adequately. Why would I not show up and repeat them? So I had to focus on what I thought they had not yet highlighted.
The issue of resource control,
yes.
There are a lot of issues that people expect will be treated at this conference.
Yes.
And a lot of people expect will be really turbulent. Contentious.
Sure,
and all
natural.
that.
That's the point of a conference.
Good. During the week, one of such issues came up, the issue of resource control. And a position put forward by one of the delegates made headlines the next day. The issue of resource control, 100% this way, 100% that way. Now, a lot of people have also spoken on that.
Yeah.
What's your own opinion?
Yes, people also spoke about fiscal federalism. Some talk about true federalism and so on. Long and the short, what are they saying? I think they're also saying that our federation that we operate today, they were not happy with it. If they're happy with it, then it will be non-issue.
Yes.
But the first thing I heard was people were saying that, what should the federating units be? That is, when you talk about the federation, it presumes that there are units that make up a federation. I heard some people saying that, let us even begin the discussion that, what should the federating units be? And interestingly, many were arguing that the federating units should not be states, it should be the zones. Now, the point I'm making is that the 6 geopolitical zones, I'm not saying this is a solution, but whether we like it or not, there is no law that was ever promulgated that said that Niger must be in the North Central Zone. Whether we like it or not, the people of Niger have accepted that they belong to that zone. So it's like there has been almost acceptance in the last 20 years that these 6 geopolitical zones are okay, they are for real. The first time they mentioned those zones, I wondered myself that I'm from the South-South zone. What does the man in Calabar have to do with the man from Auchi in Edo State? But guess what? It didn't matter what I thought. Today, the man in Calabar and the man in Auchi both accept that they're in the same South-South zone. If everybody accepts it, that's why I keep on telling lawyers who keep on arguing about constitution and law. It's not about law. It's not about constitution. I can show you examples all over the world where the law and so on follow ideas that have already been bought into. A national conference is about a contest of ideas. If ideas are accepted, as in the case of these 6 zones, then it has taken the country 20 years, and we still have not written the law to give force to these zones. Meanwhile, people are busy zoning things and everything. So many times the law actually is trying to catch up with ideas that the people have bought. And that's why some of us argue that the most important thing is getting out good ideas which Nigerians buy into. When every Nigerian has bought into something, the law has no choice but to follow eventually. So it's not true that the law always leads the way. Sometimes the law lags behind. And this conference is about bringing out ideas that you will buy into, I will buy into, everybody will buy into. And then once we've all bought into it, it's a matter of time before eventually it becomes reality.
Well, that makes it a wrap on the program today. But the conference is sure to commence committee work as it resumes this week. You can be sure we'll bring it all to you here on the program, Rethinking Nigeria, with an added perspective from our regular guest, Atedo Peterside. Till we meet again, I'm Lanre Lasese. Bye.